1st of January. You know, about a year and a half ago, well, maybe 2 years ago now, a friend of mine invited me to go deep sea fishing with him in Brazil. It was a 12-hour journey given to him by his wife, who herself didn't want to go. So he invited me, and I was excited to be going. The fishing boat was docked near the mouth of a small river, and we had to time our going so we could make it over the sandbars at the mouth of the river. So we left about 8:30 in the morning, and I was pretty excited to be heading out. I was excited about what I might catch. But I can tell you with certainty that that trip was one of the more miserable experiences of my life. And I can tell you that with certainty it was 12 hours because I spent about 11 and a half of those hours violently throwing up or dry heaving or trying to throw up. It was absolutely horrible. I got so seasick. It was the ups and downs, the rolling side to side, the constant back and forth, the instability. I never got my sea legs. But the thing is, I used to love to be in the water, in the ocean. I mean, a long time ago, 20 years ago, I started surfing. And if you've ever been surfing or gone surfing or watched surfing, you see these guys go on the swells, the ups and the downs. There's currents, there's undertows, there are things you have to watch out for. And sometimes it does get dangerous. Like one time I was at Pacific City, and I was in some nasty currents. I was getting tossed around, and my arms were just tired of paddling. I mean, I didn't have much more in me. I was just wanted to get out of it all. But the current, it kept sucking me to one of these big rocks. And so as I lay there, one of those big rocks that lay alongside Cape Kawanda. And so I eventually just went with it. I went for it. And one of these waves rose just above one of these big rocks and kind of put me on this rock. And then it went out. And as it went out, I put my foot down and I stood up. I was so happy to be there. I was just exhausted, worn out. And and I watched, I looked I looked about me and the waves were still going down below me. And I was on solid footing. I was on firm ground, and it was wonderful. I knew that the waves would pass. I knew that the tide was going out. I knew that those circumstances which I was in would pass away, but the rock which I was standing on, it would be there. It was going to be there a long time, and that was a big relief to me from the constant ups and downs and getting rolled around, thrown around by the swells, the currents, the froth of the sea. I was happy to have my feet on the rock. And so it's that rock at Pacific City that I have in mind whenever I read some of the Psalms, especially Psalm 61:2, where it says, "When my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I." When I read these verses, I think of the peace and the serenity that I had on that rock and the peace and serenity that's available to us in God in the midst of the craziness that surrounds us. In Psalm 2, opening verse of Psalm 2, the psalmist writes about the craziness, about the frothing of the ocean waves when he writes, "Why do the nations rage and the people plot a vain thing?" And it seems in today's culture things are raging. The ocean waves are frothing back and forth from one extreme to the other, from one polarity to the other. I mean, the contention holds our attention. It can power where we click on the internet. It can be used to sell us things, ideas or information, or even misinformation. It can suck us in. It can suck and pull our energy. And sometimes we can feel like we are just riding along, being pulled by these currents to think this way or act this way to do this. And there are moments of ups and downs, moments of high hopes of, oh, things are going to change now, followed by the crashing down or the fear of the crashing down. Sometimes these waves, these anxieties aren't just about external things, about our world or society in general and where it's going. Sometimes these anxieties can be in our hearts about our current situation, about relational stresses and strains. Well, listen to what the psalmist, who knew about these kinds of stresses, wrote In Psalm 94:19, he says, "In the midst of my anxieties within me, your comforts delight my soul." Or Psalm 55:22, when he encourages us to cast our burdens, he says, "Cast your burdens on the Lord, and he shall sustain you." He's the rock. He can carry it. He can hold us. In Psalm 63, verses 5 through the beginning of 7, it says, "My soul shall be satisfied as with marrow and fatness. My mouth shall praise you with joyful lips. When I remember you on my bed, I meditate you in the night watches." Those night watches when we can't sleep, when we're tossing from side to side. And verse 7, it says, "Because you have been my help." Those moments when anxiety takes us, whether that's anxiety about the external world, where we are, the currents in our culture, or the anxiety within, the anxiety of things that aren't going as well as we had hoped. We know that we can trust the words of David. David had suffered some of these anxieties himself. We know that the psalmist, he had external ups and downs and internal ups and downs. He knew what it was to be sucked in and pulled around by the currents that were beyond his control, to be buffeted by the waves. But he knew the solution to this. He knew the solution to seasickness. It was going to go to the rock that was higher than himself. So if you feel in your soul today a sense of seasickness, a weariness from riding the ups and the downs, the currents of the frothing society, or if you're tired of the waves of emotions raging within your very soul, look to the rock, cling to the rock, meditate on the rock, that rock, of course, being Jesus Christ. Storm. So you can get out of the boat. You don't have to be seasick. Even as the waves rage around you, let him be your security and your hope, an ever-present help in times of trouble. If you're not there now, don't worry. Eventually you will be. And you can remember that he is the rock